Good morning. Is that Susie or Joan or both of you?
Good morning, Rabbi. Right now it's both of us.
Look at
Good
that.
morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so we're going to talk today a little bit about the manna, and we're going to get sidetracked a little bit about livelihood and sustenance. So,
All right, I'll get it.
anyone here heard of the manna?
Yeah, and we've heard of Sarah.
We've heard of the manna. Good.
Yes.
Fell from the sky. Does anybody know what did the manna taste like?
Anything you want it to taste like.
Anything you wanted to taste like? What if you didn't have anything in mind?
And that's what it is.
What was its default taste?
Default taste.
Oh wait, I made five copies. Oh no.
We,
No.
Right, not right. No, so what's the matzah? Was there a way of making it rise?
That's a good question.
The manna was.
So the manna tasted like tapichis in honey. Now you understand. But tasted like tapichis in honey. There was once a student who was learning, but that student wasn't as bright as Baruch. And so when his teacher said it tasted like tapichis and vash, instead of saying, "Oh, I understand," he said, "What does that mean?" And his teacher said, "What do you mean? God took the Jewish people out of Egypt and he gave them the manna and it tasted like tapichis and honey." And the kid said, "I don't understand." And the teacher said, "God put the Jewish people into Egypt and then he took them out and then he gave them the manna and then it tasted like tapichis and honey." And the kid said, "I still don't understand." And the teacher said, "Okay, I'll explain it to you. God told Abraham that his descendants would be slaves in a foreign land, and then they will come out, and then he took them out, and then he brought them in the desert, and he needed to feed them, so he fed them the manna, and it tasted like sapichas and honey." And the kid says, "I still don't get it." Now the teacher's getting frustrated, and he says, "God created the world, and then came Abraham. And God told Abraham that his kids are going to go into a foreign land, and then he took them out, and he gave them the manna, and it tasted like sapichas and honey." And the kid said, "I still don't understand." He says, teacher says, "You want me to go back further than creation?" Okay. Joan, do you have the booklet in front of you?
yeah.
Okay. We're going to read about the shape and size of the manna in source number 1, if you will.
Okay. The manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance was like the appearance of crystal. People walked about and gathered it, and they ground it in a mill and crushed it in a mortar, put it in a pot, and made it into cakes. It had a taste like the taste of oil cake. When the dew descended on the camp at night, the manna would descend upon the manna about which they complained was like coriander seed, and shape and size resembled the small round seeds of the coriander plant. However, unlike the brown color of coriander seeds, its appearance was like white crystal-like substance. People would go about and gather it. They would grind it in a mill or crush it in a mortar, cook it in a pot, and make it into cakes. The taste was like the taste of rich oil. The manna was not dry. Rather, it tasted like food used with oil and moisture.
Thank you very much. So that's what was the shape and the texture of the manna. Now, what did the manna taste like? Baruch, would you like to read for us source number 2 from the Medrash?
Look at what God did for the Jewish people in this world. He rained down the manna with all different tastes, and each Jew tasted whatever they wanted. As the verse says, for these 40 years God has been with you, you have lacked nothing. What does lack nothing mean? When one craved a specific food and said, I wish I had fatty meat to eat, the manna would never, the manna would immediately taste like fatty meat. Whatever they said, God made it happen.
Ha! How's that? How's that for a takeout menu? Now, here's an interesting question which the commentaries actually discuss. What happens if somebody wanted to taste the taste of a non-kosher fruit? Would they taste that in the manna or not?
Okay, so go ahead.
I don't know what manna actually was. You know, the idea that was the first one. Horrendous.
It looked like coriander seeds.
Yeah, I read that. But
You're
it
saying,
wasn't.
can we recreate it?
No, what it wasn't for.
It wasn't. It looked like coriander
Yes,
seeds.
so what I'm saying is
It was
that-
manna.
Is there any theory that what manna?
It fell down from the sky, so it's not like there was a plant growing that they were able to pluck it from.
There was? Are
Maybe
there
I'm not
any-
understanding your question.
Any theory? I- Let's say secular theory,
You mean archaeologically?
historically,
In other words, is your
Factually-
question, is there something like that still today
or was there something to this thing?
in that time?
Yeah. That fell from the sky in the desert? That they ate. Was there something in the desert at the time that they ate?
The description in the words of the Bible, in the words of the Torah, is that the dew would fall down on the floor, and then the manna would fall down on top of that, and then there would be another layer of dew that would fall on top of it. So I think it would be hard to find historical context for.
What about the jug?
Yes, there is one jar of manna still left.
There is, really.
Yes.
That was in it.
It's manna is inside it. And you missed the joke. That joke would have been perfect for you. That I'm kind of answering you the same way the teacher answered that kid. So there were, besides for the actual ark that we discussed at length, what was inside the ark, and we did all the drawings and geometry to figure out what was inside the ark.
Let's say,
One second. There was also the staff that Aaron's staff that sprouted almonds was there, as well as a jar of manna. And what was the third thing on the shelf? Was it ashes from the red heifer? I don't remember what the third thing was.
there actually is a jar of manna.
So there is a jar of manna that God told Moses to take one jar of manna and put it by the ark, next to the ark, as a reminder for generations that whenever you start misbehaving and saying God can't do this, God can't do that, or whenever you're stuck in a tough spot and say, well, how is God going to provide sustenance for me today? Then you could take out that jar and say, or remember about that jar, right? We can't access it right now. It was hidden together with the ark in one of the tunnels somewhere underneath the Temple Mount.
That jar still exists.
But that jar still exists together with the ark. I
I
mean,
mean, that people-
it didn't go moldy for 2,000 years, so I
people
doubt
have
another
actually-
2,000.
People have actually seen. In our time, people have
In our time, no. I know that pokes a little hole in your theory.
It's my theory.
The
I don't have a theory, I just have a question.
okay. The
Suppose,
the
let me put
ark.
it to this,
Mhm.
suppose you're saying that jar exists somewhere in underneath.
Yes.
Suppose an archaeologist was to find that,
Mhm.
jar.
Mhm.
And
Just
this,
like Indiana Jones.
yeah, just like in the end. And he was to find that jar and open it. Now, assuming he was an atheist who didn't believe the word of the Torah,
Mhm.
and he looked in, what would he think he was looking?
It's a good question. The answer is that I think, according to all accounts, the manna was a miracle, a very clear miracle, and therefore, someone who doesn't believe in miracles doesn't believe that manna existed.
Right, but he's looking at it.
So maybe he wouldn't be an atheist anymore.
That's nice.
Meaning, it's like the splitting of the sea. Either it happened or it didn't happen. We believe that the Torah is the word of God, and therefore it must have happened. There are people who say, how could it have happened?
Well, actually, there are some theories. Tidal wave or
But it says in the beginning, the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance was like the appearance of crystal.
So they would see white crystal-looking coriander seeds.
What is it? What's it?
I think like a little round bowl. I have a bottle of it in my spice cabinet. Like little round bowls.
Oh, sorry to,
That's okay. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you.
get back to my question. Assuming it's not matzah, how did they get the cake?
To rise? I don't know. It says that they ground it up and they baked it or cooked it. So I'm not sure what they mixed it with.
Well, it doesn't say roll.
It doesn't say it.
No, they said they make cakes.
But it-
Okay, but I'm assuming.
It could be
cake
that it
is
was
different
matzah.
from matzah, which is.
Well,
unleavened.
maybe cake to them is different than cake to us.
I mean, you also have a fig
Like the
cake. I
British-
think that the
Like the British style big biscuit, instead of cookies, maybe cake. Like so what you're saying is it could have been unleavened.
it
yeah.
could have been unleavened. Could have been unleavened. In fact, they were there 40 years, so they must have had some Pesachs. Was the manna different on Passover? That special. What about the people who had? Was their diet manna available also if they wanted? The Medrash also actually tells us that the leftover manna, meaning people were only able to gather as much as they needed. If someone missed a little bit, like they were in a rush, when they would come home and they would measure it, it would all be the correct measurement. If someone was gluttonous and was feeling very hungry, and so they gathered extra, by the time they got home, it was all it was all the measurement when they measured it when they got home was the measurement exactly how much God said would be for each person of the household. So I guess God put extras out there, and the extras, when the dew would melt, the manna would melt as well. And the wild animals, I guess deer or whatever, was out there drinking, would drink the water of the melted manna. And these animals would have supremely superior taste than regular game animals. And all the nations of the world were saying, look how great the Jews are. Like there's something to this. So the manna, by all accounts, is 100% a miracle. I've never heard of a rational explanation for it, but maybe there is one out there. I would love to hear it. Okay. How hard did the people have to work in order to get their manna? Madcha David, would you like to read for us source number 3 from the Talmud in Tractate Yoma?
It is written, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. And it is written, and then the people shall go and gather a day's portion every day. Exodus 16:4. And it is written, the people went about and gathered it. Numbers 11.8. How can these texts be reconciled?
So I'm going to pause you right there and ask, what's the problem? Why do these texts need to be reconciled? What is the contradiction in the text? Nobody?
I'm sorry.
Source number 3, the first paragraph, ends that we need to reconcile these texts. My question is, what's wrong with these texts? Joan, Susie, anyone? What is wrong? What is contradictory about these texts that needs reconciling?
See the contradiction. First thing to do, he says, and then it rained on top of the dew, and the people went out in the morning and gathered.
Well, evidently there must be some kind of contradiction because the Talmud says that the verses need to be reconciled, so there must be some kind of an issue here.
One says it was collected in a day, and one says it was collected in a night.
It was collected at night. It doesn't say anywhere that it was collected at night. But the dew fell upon the camp in the night, and the manna fell upon it.
source 3, right?
Source number 3, first
Okay, I see
paragraph.
one slight contradiction.
What's the slight contradiction?
The manna fell at the opening of their home. They expand.
Oh, 1 second. You're getting already in the answer. That's already in the answer. We're in the first paragraph. First paragraph of source number 3. Where's the contradiction?
Well, you fell upon it at night. Are you saying the contradiction is used towards night and day?
No, because one is about the gathering and one is about the falling. The manna fell
Right.
in the night, and they gathered it in the day.
Didn't apply to the wicked.
That's going to be in the answer.
Read it.
Not yet. We still have to figure out what the question is. We can't look at the answer if we don't understand the question.
You can contradict.
Should I give you guys a hint?
It says they should go out.
And when the dew fell upon the.
What does it mean
Give
to
us
go
a
out?
lifeline.
Where? What?
Just
A lifeline. Where did the manna fall?
The dew.
But where? Like geographically where?
Within seeing distance.
The first verse says, where did it fall?
Upon the camp.
Upon the camp. The second verse says, they went out. So was it in the camp or was it out of the camp?
You're saying that, well, I interpret shall go out, meaning out of the tent.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if we
Shall
read
it
it as
not?
out of their tents, then there's no contradiction. So from the
Exactly.
fact that the Talmud tells us that there's contradiction must mean that the word in Hebrew, v'yatzu, refers to going out as not just like opening the door, but actually going out.
Going out of the camp.
Going out of the camp.
Or like just going further than a step outside of your tent. And the word shotu, which means that they went about, is also a very different expression. That they were going around to gather it.
Is there morning dew in the desert?
Google would know better than I. Okay, so now that we understand the question, David, please continue. What's the answer? There were 3 groups of people. Go ahead.
For the righteous, the manna fell at the opening of their home. They expended no effort at all. The average people went out of the camp and gathered what fell there. The wicked had to go out further to gather.
So what's interesting from here is that we see that there were wicked people also in the desert with the Jewish people, while they were seeing the manna from heaven coming from straight from the Lord, and they were being sustained and nourished by this miraculous food. They still remained wicked somehow. Okay, go on.
The manna is called bread. Exodus 16:4 cakes. And the Numbers 11:8. And another verse states that it was ground in its mill. Numbers 11:8, implying that it was neither bread nor a cake. How can these texts be reconciled?
Over here we see the question a little clearer.
That's the way I'm reading it, though.
What? No? So this one we have also problems. Was it bread, was it cakes, or was it ground in milk? So here we have the answer. What's the answer here?
For the righteous, it fell as baked bread. For average people, it fell as unbaked cakes.
Basically, like, I guess, dough, that cakes of dough that they would have to bake themselves.
For the wicked came in an unprocessed form, and consequently they ground it in a mill.
Okay. Thank you, David. Okay. Here's my question for you. What blessing do we make on bread? What blessing do we make on bread? Right? The manna was a bread in its finished state. Hamotzi lecha min haaretz. And what does that mean?
He brings bread from us.
Who brings forth bread from the ground. Could they make that blessing on the manna?
You thought it was bread.
It
No,
wasn't
'cause-
brought forth
'cause
from the
it's
ground.
not ground, yeah.
So, what blessing did they make?
Whatever from the sky.
Oh, that's one of the answers. That's the source number 4. Zaman, would you like to read for us source number 4?
You asked what blessing they made on the man. Rabbi Menachem Azira of blessed memory writes that in the future, at the Messianic feast of the Livethian, they will take out a jar of manna, eat it, making the blessing who brings forth bread from heaven.
Ah, okay. Very good. So instead of saying it brings forth bread from the earth, he said it brings forth bread from heaven. There are also other explanations. One of them is that because it didn't have a fixed taste, you'd make the blessing of whichever food you were trying to get the taste of. So if you wanted to have a nice steak, you would say the shehakol blessing. Okay. Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to get into explain, like that's the background of the manna. Now we're going to get into the Rebbe's explanation: heavenly bread without waste. So this was something, actually, one of the complaints that the Jewish people had is we don't need the bathroom. Could you imagine they were complaining they didn't need the bathroom?
No.
They were complaining. They were complaining we don't need the bathroom. But what was their complaint? They said we're going to explode. You ever saw such a thing of people who are eating and not using the bathroom? Something strange here. We don't want this stuff. I think today you put a lot of doctors out of business if you could eat stuff that you didn't need to go to the bathroom after.
Didn't write that useful, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, the Torah refers to the manna as bread from heaven or grain of heaven. As a result, some early halachic authorities maintain that the blessing recited over the manna was who brings forth bread from heaven. The difference between bread from heaven and bread from earth is that bread from the earth requires extensive labor before it becomes fit to eat. The entire process of bread making must be carried out. You have to plow the ground, you have to sow the seeds, and so on. Even after all this, so first of all, you have a lot of waste in the process of creating the bread. And ordinary bread, even after you've taken out all of that waste, still contains waste that the body needs to process. Bread from heaven, by contrast, required none of these labors and contained no waste whatsoever. Was it saline?
Was it what?
It sounds like D50 or whatever they
Well,
give you in the
yes,
hospital.
coming from heaven, it was absolutely pure,
Mhm.
Exactly.
and being absolutely pure, the body would be able to absorb everything
Hmm.
without waste.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It was like a
So
shot
I
of
ate I wouldn't
nutrients.
have to go to the bathroom 5 times every day.
Sounds like something of the future. Sounds like every person's dream. Heavenly bread even for the wicked. So the Rebbe says something very interesting. Remember, we noted about the wicked people who still existed then. This heavenly bread did not only serve as food for the righteous. Average people, average people in the literal sense, meaning people whose merits and sins were equally balanced, also ate it, and wicked people did too. This wasn't something special that only the righteous people, page 4, that only the righteous people were given to eat. But even the people who were not completely righteous, people who had some sin to them, and even the people who were wicked were also eating from there. Even when the manna served as food for the wicked, it remained a food without waste. Even after it was eaten, it did not lose its unique quality. And it did not change after being absorbed in their bodies. Moreover, not only was the manna unchanged by being eaten by the wicked, but because it retained its elevated nature even after being absorbed internally, it even refined those who ate it. Thus, the sages said the Torah was given to be interpreted only by those who ate the manna. Through eating the manna, the Jewish people became fit to receive and interpret the Torah. The influence of the manna extended to all 600,000 Jews, For each one of them received the Torah, and each possessed a share in its plain meaning, its hints, its homiletic interpretation, and the mystical dimension. So these wicked people were quite holy, these wicked people. That even though they were wicked people, the manna brought them up to a certain level of refinement that they were able to understand and comprehend the Torah. So why was the Torah given specifically to that generation who ate from the manna from heaven? So there's three reasons that we're going to discuss right now. The first one is a very simple reason. If you don't have to be involved in earning a livelihood because your bread falls down straight from heaven, then you can spend all of your time just focusing on studying, morning till night, without having to worry about a livelihood. So that's the second explanation, is that the manna was a test of faith. It would come every morning, and you didn't know if the manna is going to come tomorrow or not. Today we know it did. Then they didn't. Just like every day we're worried, how are we going to pay our bills? Manna from heaven. It's different packaging, but it's the same miracle that God figures out a way for us to survive. But the deeper explanation that we're going to learn over here, let's look at the bottom of page number 4, that it was because of the nourishment that their souls got was on a higher level than the nourishment that we get. The wicked remained as they were after eating the manna, did not immediately bring them to repentance. Page number 5. For this reason, some of the Jews still did have to grind, pound, cook the manna before they could eat it. And there were still those who tested God these 10 times after eating the manna. But that only means that the manna had not yet completed the process of refining them. Nevertheless, since it was an entirely heavenly substance, it certainly had some refining effect. Upon them. In the end, when the destined purification would be completed, the manna would also have played a role. Chaim, source number 5. We have a very interesting question over here, which is, what happens? So let's start with another question. What happens if you are walking without your phone battery dies and you're lost in the middle of nowhere and you don't know what the day of the week is it? What do you do for Shabbat? How do you keep Shabbos? How do you keep Shabbat if you're lost and you don't know what day of the week it is? If you're lost and you don't know what day of the week it is.
Count from the last day that you go. If I go 3 days ago, I knew it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, today, Friday.
Now, what happens if you lose track of time? Because you're, I don't know, in Alaska, traveling around the world in a sailboat, and you don't know, or you just completely discombobulated, and it's been already so many days, so many months by yourself, shipwrecked on an island, and you don't remember.
Well, then, then that question was combined with part one.
Okay, so you're very much on the right track here. The answer is that you're allowed to do whatever you need to do to survive every day. But when do you make Kiddush?
You don't have any wine.
You figured out a way to squeeze some grapes that you found. Or you make the Kiddush prayer. Remember we learned in the Talmud thing. Remember we learned in the in the Talmud class that we have the Kiddush in our prayers and the Kiddush in the wine. So he doesn't have wine, but he could still say Kiddush in his prayers. So when does he make Kiddush? So the Mishnah tells us you count 6 days, and the 7th day you make Kiddush. That's it. Now, we know that we have a special Torah portion that we read every week, right? What happens if you have a minyan and you have a Torah scroll, but you just don't remember what week we're up to? For example, imagine you've just been hiding for 6 weeks from persecution of the enemy, or let's say you, I don't know, whatever, something happened, and you don't know which week is this week the correct Torah portion.
You
What
take
do
your
you do?
best guess.
What?
You take your best guess.
You take your best guess. Chaim, read source number 5 for us, please, from Sefer Ha'itim. What do you do?
One who's far away from Jewish community on Shabbat, not know which Torah reading is read that week, should read the portion of the manna, especially if it's said on Shabbat.
Thank you very much. The portion of the manna was given on Shabbat, and therefore, just like every holiday, we read the portion that has to do with that holiday. What's the portion that has to do with Shabbat? Manna from heaven. You can't go wrong if you speak about the manna. So it becomes like a holiday reading instead of like a weekly reading.
This says, wait a minute, far away on Shabbat, but we don't know if it's Shabbat or not.
So we're talking two different scenarios. The first question was, I was just asking, I added that in. Over here, we're talking, you know when it's Shabbat, but you just don't know which Torah portion to read. Says the Rebbe, at first glance, there are many sections of the Torah that are associated with Shabbat. After all, everyone agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbat. So if so, one could just as well read the Ten Commandments. They were also given on Shabbat. Why then is the custom specifically to read the section about the manna? The explanation, based on the above, that the manna retained its unique greatness, even after descending into the very lowest levels, into the bowels of the wicked. The special connection between the manna and Shabbat becomes clear. Shabbat also shares this unique characteristic. While Shabbat descends into the physical world, it still retains its essential nature and intrinsic holiness, as we're going to see in source number 6, that if there's someone who is not trusted about taking tithes, and in general, you would not be allowed to eat any food from them, even if they tell you that the tithes were taken, because we don't trust that they understand the nuance of the law. Susie, do you have the notes in front of you? Joe? Baruch, would you like to read for us source number 6?
One who purchased produce from someone not trusted to separate tithes and forgot to tithe it themselves may on Shabbat ask the seller and rely on their word.
So we have a guy who's not trusted on tithes because he's more nervous about making money than selling produce that has been tithed. So in general, we can't believe him. But if it's Shabbat, then you can ask him, and if he tells you he took the tithes, you can believe him. Says the Talmud, continue, Baruch.
They said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that is. They said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that is was permitted in honor of Shabbat. That is that. If so, why
Something's
ask
wrong
the
over
seller?
here.
Rabbi
By the end of this is the important part.
Okay. Rabbi Bibi said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, the awe of the Shabbat is upon them, and they will tell the truth.
Okay, so this person, even though they don't always tell the truth, but on Shabbat, now we're talking, of course, about a person who understands Shabbat, the awe of Shabbat. Shabbat is such a special day that they will not tell a lie on Shabbat. And if it is not correctly been tithed, they will admit that. Okay, let's see the Rebbe's explanation on page number 7. So the light of the Shabbat penetrates all of creation to the point that even a completely wicked person does not lie on Shabbat. Yet, this does not mean that on Shabbat this person is suddenly inspired to repent and ceases to be wicked. We are speaking about someone who remains the very same person he was on Friday, and nevertheless is not going to lie on Shabbat, because the light of Shabbat reaches even the lowest spiritual level. And this is something that is reflected in Jewish law. The reason for the law that if one does not know which Torah portion is to be read on Shabbat, the section of the manna should be read. So this is the reason for the law. Everything that comes down into the world has its source in Torah, page number 8. Therefore, in order to bring the spirit of Shabbat into the world, so that worldly existence itself becomes permeated with the light of Shabbat, one should read the Torah section that most generally expresses the essence of Shabbat, the section of the manna. For the manna, while retaining its essential greatness, descended even to the very lowest levels. The same cannot be said of the Ten Commandments or other sections of the Torah. Although they are exceedingly lofty, they do not express as strongly the idea of descending into the lowest realms while remaining unchanged in their greatness. Shabbat and the manna have one thing in common, which is that even though they come all the way to this physical world, they remain in their spiritual great state. Okay, so that's the manna and the bread when it comes to food. Let's talk about spiritual bread on page number 9. Everything in the world has its source in the Torah. The two types of bread, the bread from earth and the bread from heaven, the manna, also exist within the Torah itself. For the Torah is called bread. These two spiritual forms of bread are the root source of the two physical forms of physical bread. The two forms of bread in the Torah is the revealed dimension of the Torah and the inner dimension of the Torah. The revealed dimension is called the bread from the earth, while the inner dimension is called the bread from heaven. The revealed dimension of the Torah is called bread from the earth because it involves questions, debate, and intellectual struggle, all of which requires effort and exhaustion. The inner dimension of the Torah, by contrast, like for example, Hasidic philosophy, Kabbalah, is called bread from heaven, for it contains no difficulties and no dispute. One should not think that because the inner dimension of the Torah is called bread from heaven, it belongs to every Jew. What? There's something missing over here. I'm going to translate from the English, from the Hebrew. However, do not think that because the inner dimension of the Torah is called bread from heaven, then therefore it is only applicable to the select few. That is not true. Also, the inner dimension of the Torah, just like the Mon, belongs to every Jew, even to the wicked in the plain sense of the term. Not only can this study never cause harm, God forbid, just as the manna contained no waste and caused no harm. On the contrary, since study is great because it leads to action, the study of Hasidic teachings will ultimately lead people to return to God, study Torah, and observe the commandments. As our sages have promised, the light within it will restore a person to the good, referring to the inner light of the Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah. For this reason, one must never withhold the study of the inner dimension of Torah from any Jew. On the contrary, every effort should be made to bring every person closer to this bread from heaven, the study of the inner teachings of the Torah. Through this, they will arrive more quickly at the ultimate truth and become someone who does not lie. The falsehood of the material world, which conceals and denies divine truth, will be removed from within them. There will no longer be any conflict between the divine soul and the animal soul, no unresolved doubts or inner contradictions, and we will walk on the path of the King of the universe. Beautiful. Key points. The manna came down from heaven and its taste changed according to the desire of the person eating it. Parenthetically, there were 3 things, I believe, that were not that you could not taste from the manna: cucumbers, onions, or eggs. And therefore, there's a custom in many communities.
The doctor says that?
Sorry?
Somewhere it says
Yeah. Cucumbers, eggs, and onions. Which is why in many communities on Shabbat, the custom is to have either egg salad with onions in it, or cucumber salad. So growing up, we had a cucumber salad, cucumbers and onions, and an egg salad. The cucumbers and the onions, I think, is something to do with that it's not good for nursing women, at least back then. The cucumbers and onions of back then were not good for babies. Okay. Although it was given equally to all, there were practical differences between the righteous, the intermediate, and the wicked in where they received it and how much preparation it required. There is a dispute regarding whether their blessing was made or not. According to one opinion, they said, "Who brings forth bread from heaven." The manna represents spiritual nourishment that comes without labor and without waste, and it brought about spiritual refinement even among the wicked. For this reason, the Torah was given specifically to those who ate the manna. The sages teach that if a person does not know which Torah portion to read on Shabbat, he should read the portion of the manna because it was spoken on Shabbat, And the Rebbe asks why this. There were many other sections that were also spoken on Shabbat. And the answer is that the unique quality of the manna is that its special virtue remained intact even when it descended to the wicked. The same is true of Shabbat. Its divine light penetrates even the lowest levels without being diminished. All influences in the world are drawn from the Torah in accordance with the weekly portion. Therefore, when one wishes to evoke the spiritual quality of Shabbat in the world and does not know which portion to read, the portion of manna is chosen because it expresses the descent of a lofty divine light into the lower world while remaining completely intact. This idea is also reflected in the halacha, the Jewish law, that a person who is generally not trusted regarding tithes is nevertheless believed on Shabbat because the awe of Shabbat rests upon him. Since the light of Shabbat permeates all of reality, even a wicked person is affected by it. The revealed dimension of the Torah resembles bread from earth. It involves labor, effort, questions, differing opinions. The inner dimension of the Torah resembles bread from heaven, clear, illuminating, and free of questions and dispute. However, we should not think that the inner dimension of the Torah is reserved for a select few. On the contrary, it belongs to every Jew. It illuminates a person's path, removes doubts in matters of faith, and guides him along the proper way. Takeaway: every Jew should be involved in the study of Hasidic philosophy, the inner dimension of the Torah, which illuminates the servants of God in a vibrant and uplifting way. A practical place to begin is with the study of the daily portion of Tanya. This provides a simple and structured way to begin experiencing the teachings of Hasidic philosophy on a regular basis and bring the light of Hasidus into everyday life. And if you look at the daily study app from Chabad.org, or if you go on Chabad.org's in daily study, Rabbi Josh Gordon gives a great Tanya class, and you can listen to that on single speed or double speed, however you prefer. Before we close up, please join us this Friday afternoon at 6:30 for a community Friday night dinner, and this Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. for services and a kiddush in honor of my mother's 5th yard site. It's going to be this Shabbat. Friday night? Also, my mother's yard site is Friday night. Shabbat, I figured, let's get together. Will you guys be here Friday night and Shabbat day?
Friday night. Saturday.
Okay. What about yourself?
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, but on the
I'll send out an email, and I'm hoping to have a minion.
The one with the decision on make manna taste like the pork chop.
I don't know, but if there's any way to taste the pork chop, it would be with the manna, right? That's a great loophole.
What about bagel? The bagel flavored soybean.
Okay.
That's man-made, so.
It's made of soybean. Yeah.
So long as they don't put any real flavoring in.
When the manna first started, they had already the Ten Commandments in the Torah. So they knew kashrut.
No. No, the manna received, the Torah was given 50 days out after they left Egypt, and the manna started falling on the 31st day after they left Egypt. So there were 20 days, about 3 weeks of having manna before they.
So they could have requested that they like treif.
Yeah, they could have had treif for 20 days, 3 weeks of treif before they had the laws of kosher.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. If you say that the manna could only taste like kosher things, what about before the Torah was given? Good. Very good, yeah. So I'm hoping to have a meeting both Friday night and Shabbat day so that I can say Kaddish. So we'll be in touch. Yasha Koyach. Take care, everyone. Oh, next week we are back on regular schedule. Tuesday is the Talmud class, and Wednesday, here. However,
What about that? I'd say the same.
so let me just check, because it could be that next week Wednesday is Mushka's graduation, which will mean that we won't be having a Parsha class. So stay with me just a second while I check my messages. Okay, yeah. Next week Wednesday, no class next week Wednesday.
So in person.
No in-person class. On Tuesday, we'll have the Talmud class. Likely 10:45 start. I'll send that an email. So Tuesday, yes class. Wednesday, no class. The following week will be again Tuesday Talmud, Wednesday in person, and then after that the kids are out of school for 2 weeks, so we're gonna take a bit of a break for the beginning of the summer. Okay.
Okay.
So next week, no in-person class. The following week, yes, in-person class, and then we're gonna have a little break of classes for a few weeks. Thank you guys for being here.
Okay. Bye, Rabbi. Have a nice week. Have a good